The following video you're about to watch was chosen by Jonathan Fryer. He's a subscriber on the channel that really adds to the conversation and has made some really neat comments that I've enjoyed reading. Thank you for being awesome, and I hope you and everyone else enjoys the review. Solo board gaming night here, and today I'm going to be reviewing Batman: The Dark Knight Returns board game. As always, I like to give you an overhead view of the table so you get an idea of how much space this game takes up. Now, this vertical board takes up a massive amount of table space. Not only that, you're going to need plenty of space off to the sides for the cards that are required to play it, as well as the dice, and space for you to be able to roll your dice as well. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at the box and the contents to see what's inside. This is actually the deluxe version of Batman: The Dark Knight Returns. There is a retail edition that does not come with the miniatures or the slipcover that you see here, which looks really nice and has a shiny finish to it. The slipcover holds two smaller boxes within it. One of them holds the miniatures and the other the components, and both of them have a magnetic lid to it, which is actually really nice. The component includes a really long vertical board, along with every card that you're going to need for each individual book. A nice dice bag with the emblem of Batman on it, which is really neat. Some standees if you do not use the miniatures, a marker, and a bunch of tokens, in which, once again, I used a craft box to be able to nicely organize them and store them. The dice are custom made, and specifically Batman's dice are meant to look like batarangs. The minis are not the most detailed minis I've ever seen, but they will represent all of the vehicles in which Batman will have at his disposal, as well as all of the bosses that you're going to be facing throughout the 4 books, and the allies that will be joining alongside Batman to help fight the crime found in Gotham City. The rulebooks are giant, among the biggest rulebooks I have ever read, and there's a rule book for each individual book that you're going to be experiencing, as well as a standalone mission and versus mode book. The overall quality of the components found within Batman: The Dark Knight Returns is really well done. I'm going to quickly go over just the basics on how to play the game. The player reference cards are book specific. Depending on which book you're playing, you'll be able to have a different reference card that's going to help you out with both the fighting sequence and the round sequence. It really makes playing this game kind of feel like a breeze. For the sake of the review, I'm going to leave out the setup because honestly, it's kind of really long, and the book does a good job explaining every single step very clearly. I'm sure and confident that you're not going to have trouble setting up at all whatsoever. But let's save some time and get straight into the meat and potatoes of the gameplay. At the start of Batman's turn, you draw an event card. Now, it's the same as the fight card, but you're going to look at the bottom part, which is the actual event. Whatever's written on text, you're basically going to just do it on the board. You get to move Batman along the path as long as you're within the same region as far as you want. However, As soon as you get into a new region, which is differentiated by the different color, you immediately stop. You can move as many spaces as you want up until you reach a new region. From there, if there's an enemy token, Batman must land on it. Next, you get to activate any one ally. In this case, I can activate Commissioner Gordon. He's able to move up to 3 spaces along any path. His ability is if he lands on a press token, he can remove that press token from the location. Make sure you take a look at your ally cards to find out which abilities they have and how they can help you throughout the game. You then get to decide whether you're going to fight or sneak. To sneak, you simply just move Batman to an open space at your current location. If you decide to fight, you remain on the token, draw a fight card, and add it to your hand. There's no limit to the amount of cards you can have in your hand. However, you can only use fight cards during fights, and you could use detective cards anytime, as long as the text allows. You then have to roll the amount of dice depending on how many enemies of the same type are adjacent to you. In this case, there are 2 adjacent enemies of the same type, so I'm going to roll 2 enemy dice. In this case, I have a blank and a block. Now you get to choose up to 3 bat dice from your utility belt and roll them. In this case, I got 1 miss, a POW, and a ram. Since the mutant had rolled 1 block, my POW goes away. However, my ram remains. What that does, that gets to remove 1 enemy, in this case the one I'm standing on, and since it's a ram, I also lose 1 life of my choosing. There's a helpful chart in the rulebook explaining what the icons on the dice do. There's also an enemy token card that references what the enemies do. There's also a cooldown card that changes depending on which book you're on, and that lets you determine what you do with your battering dice that you rolled. From there, you determine whether you're going to keep fighting or stop. It's up to you. After the fight, go ahead and activate whichever action space you're landed on. Once again, the rulebook will give you a nice chart letting you know what the icons on the board mean. Finally, you take a look at the GCPD track. From there, you look at the location, the enemy type, and the amount of enemies of that type that you're going to add to the map. From there, you simply add it to the location that you are currently on, and then move your player tracker down 1 space. You rinse and repeat that until you've done 4 turns to end a round. On your final turn of the round, once you add any enemies to the location in which it's instructed to you to do, you do the round end sequence, which you place 1 riot, draw a path, and add 1 to the doomsday clock. You look around the whole entire map, and any map that has a location covered by enemy tokens, you're going to place a riot token on that. If you ever have to place a 12th riot token on the map, you automatically lose the game. You then get to draw a line or a path between any 2 locations. Don't worry, as long as you follow the rulebook, there's clear examples on what to and not to do when drawing a path. Finally, you move the Doomsday token up 1. If it ever reaches 12 o'clock, you lose. And that's it. You just rinse and repeat, and you do that throughout 4 rounds. Your objective is to defeat the boss before he defeats you, you run out of time in the doomsday clock, or too many riots have been placed on the map. That's how you play Dark Knight Returns, the board game. I usually don't like starting reviews with the con, but I have to talk about the art, the feel, and the look of the game itself. The board game, it doesn't really have a Batman feel to it. It doesn't even have a Gotham City feel to it. I mean, it doesn't even look like it really. What it reminds me of is when you're going on a train and you look at the train station, they give you a map of where all the trains go. That's what it looks like here. I mean, yeah, there's art on the cards, and the art comes straight from the graphic novel, and I guess that's cool and all, but it's kind of just two colors, red and blue. Nothing really stands out and feels like Batman. I mean, there's the battering dice, and that's a cool little novelty, I guess you can say, but as a whole, this just does not feel like Batman to me. And it's a shame because the box itself, I mean, it looks cool. The box looks like Batman, but the game board does absolutely nothing for me when it comes to whether or not it feels like a Batman game. I'm going to be honest. I was not thinking at all that I was going to like the fact that I had to mark the board with the marker. I actually hated that idea a lot, but it turned out to actually be pretty cool. You can mark things on the map that I don't want to give away, but it changed the game. Coming from someone that really likes to take care of the games that they own and keep them in sleeves and whatnot, the idea of writing the board was so difficult to get used to. Everything in my mind was saying, don't do it, don't do it. But at the end of the day, the way that marking the map changed the game itself really was kind of awesome, especially towards the last two books. I want to say it was just really cool what they did with that. The rulebook, however, although did a really good job teaching you how to play the game, was just a giant floppy mess. This thing was just absolutely unwieldy. I had to use a separate little table just to be able to reference the rulebook whenever I needed to. It was just such a huge floppy rule book. I mean, here's a comparison so you get a rough idea of how much bigger it is than other normal board games that I've played. The player reference cards, however, were extremely helpful and very, very well made. There's a different player reference card for every individual book that you have to learn because there's different things that you have to do. And I thought it was really well done. I love the player reference cards. Those nice player reference cards can't save the game from the chaotic game design that I found very fiddly. When it came to things like the riots, looking at the map and trying to find out which location has all three spaces filled to put a riot was difficult on my eyes. It was like a strain on my eyes. I mean, the dice themselves for the enemies, they were okay. Doing things like saving a game, which I'll come back to later, and just the way the game itself felt fiddly. Placing your enemy tokens on the board, it never felt right to me. And the riot tokens and having to take care of all the right everything that you had to take care of, it just didn't feel right. I really did not enjoy the game design of this game, and it was really frustrating the entire time that I was playing it. Now, I know that I'm going to sound like I'm kind of contradicting myself here, but the chaos does work in a way for the game. And the reason I say that is this game kind of feels like a legacy game, but it's not a legacy game because you could rewrite it and replay it again. But the thing is, the things that happen later on in the game, the way that you change the map later on, like in the third and fourth book, really, really does bring so much chaos and so much change to this map that I did have fun doing that and seeing that. It was a lot of fun. I really did feel like Batman struggling to save Gotham City. That's how much chaos. I mean, I can't even let you know what happens, but trust me, crazy things happen on this map, and you could change spaces. The map completely changes, and chaos absolutely does ensue. And when it comes to like the actual bad guys, depending on which bad guy you go up against, really does change what happens on the board drastically. And it really feels like Batman's in an uphill battle the whole entire time. The chaos is strong in this one. It's kind of funny to think about how much chaos one little marker like this can cause on this game board. And this has to be one of the biggest cons I have ever gone through in any game, ever. And that's the save system. The most horrible save system I've ever done. You see, all these tokens here, in order to save the game, for example, you will move this mutant token and write the letter M for mutant so that if you want to replay this game, you get to do that. But you have to do that to every single token, every single character on here, the things that you have saved, the cards, everything. It's just an absolute mess that makes teardown and setup a nightmare. The biggest nightmare of any board game I have ever played. And to set the game up again, what you would have to do is erase that M and place that token back on there and do that for every single token. Who thought about this? Who said this is a good idea? Let's do this. Terrible idea. Over the past month and a half, I've been moving to a new house, so I didn't have that luxury to just keep a game set up on a table. I had to wait till I actually moved and had a table in which I had no one touch. And for days after day after day, I would just leave it up on that table just so that I can finish playing this game. I couldn't stand it. Terrible. My warning to you is that if you cannot leave a game up on a table untouched for days, stay away from this game. Unfortunately, the actual gameplay loop of the game itself didn't really do much for me. Whether it was the dice, the battling, moving Batman around, or adding enemy tokens to the map, depending on where the GCPD track was telling me where to put it, I just didn't resonate with me. I mean, not even the cards that were in the game were enough to get me to enjoy the actual gameplay loop. This game kind of missed for me. It's not terrible, but it just didn't resonate with me. And it didn't really feel like I was Batman. It really didn't feel like a Batman game. There are other games that I've played that are themed with Batman that I've liked a lot more than this. This would not be a game that would be my first go-to game. Overall, this game just didn't resonate with me when it came to the gameplay loop. Yeah, it was fun with the marker marking things around. That was neat and all. I had fun doing that. But the gameplay loop, for me personally, it wasn't my favorite gameplay loop at all. Probably my least favorite. Another con has to do with the dice themselves. Now, they look beautiful. They're cool and custom made. They're meant to look like batterings, and that looks really awesome. They even have the writing on it the way that the Adam West show used to look, and I really liked that. It looked great. It looks great. And I enjoy how there's different powers, and you can add more to the game later on, but what I do not like about these dice is the way the dice feel when you have them in your hands to roll. They just don't feel right to me. I didn't like them. I just didn't like the feel of it. Especially if you're going to use a dice tray to roll them. It doesn't feel right. It's not bad. It's not... I just didn't really like it as much as I was expecting. I really do think that these battering wings over here really do disturb. It doesn't feel good in your hand. It just doesn't feel good when you're rolling. I mean, it rolls alright, but it just doesn't feel good. I think, just like this result, the dice was a complete miss, in my opinion. In closing, Batman The Dark Knight Returns is not a terrible game. It's just an okay game for me. It's okay. It's compared to other games that I have played throughout the year, this is the most middle of the road game that I can think of. It doesn't do anything terribly amazing. I was kind of bored in several parts. Considering it's a Batman game, it doesn't really feel like I'm Batman, really. There's a lot of other games I would rather play over this that are Batman themed that kind of blow this game out of the water, in my opinion. Now, there is something I do want to mention, and it has to do with the four additional standalone missions that are included in this book. That's probably the only way that I will see myself coming back to the game, because there's four scenarios, each with a normal and a hard mode, and that they do seem interesting and an easy way to play the game without having to deal with that horrendous save system. I mean, just that alone kills this game for me, and in good conscience, I couldn't recommend this game to everyone. If you're a diehard Batman fan like I am, then you might find some enjoyment out of this game. You really will. You might find some enjoyment out of it. But in good conscience, I just couldn't recommend this game flat out to anyone. It's just not the first game I would recommend. I've played much, much better games, and sometimes at a lower price point as well. I hope you enjoyed this review. This was Solo Board Gaming Night. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you all have a great game night. Take care.